All right, welcome to TableTalk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bedluck Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy,
Hello.
and we got an interesting chat today. But as always, we tend to get started about 20-25 minutes in, so we let people hop into chat to say hello. So if you're watching us post the facts, or you're watching, you're trying to catch up to where we are in the video, you can go ahead and jump up to that time, and you'll be about where we're starting. But like always, as we start off, how you doing, Alex? What's going on?
Pretty good. A lot of Lancer reading. I gotta be real. I have spent the past good few days just reading through CompCon and digging through the Lancer books that I have on this series I have, because I thought it's just like a tiny little thing. How hard could it be? How difficult could it be? There's so much little reading, and then also the fact that some of these Lancer mechs, I'm gonna be completely real with you, because the core concept for this video idea, for anyone who don't know, which I mean, it seems like the video sadly is not doing as crazy good as I was hoping. Well, we'll see. Lancer videos sometimes they just kind of they sneak up on you, you know. You
Yeah.
know this more than anyone. The Lancer video I put out is the one fun fact for every Lancer mech. And for each one, I went through all the flavor text, all the lore we have available for each mech, and gave a little fact about them. And man, oh man, gotta say, not every mech is made equally. Some mechs are
Yeah.
ooh, so well detailed, and then some mechs are the Tortuga, where you're like, is there anything here? Nope, that's a gun. That's another gun. Anything about here? Oh, that's just that's just armor plating. Okay. And there's
Yeah.
nothing detailing its creation or anything. And then other mechs are you know, actually detailing its development process or detailing something really interesting about the world. Or talking about, like the Morning Cloak, where it goes into the idea of the Dihede metavolt, because that's how that was developed, or the concept of the Firmament, which is basically another group faction in Lancer's application of blink space, which is the Onic people who are able to utilize blink space in a way that they don't have the Omninet and stuff, but they can physically utilize blink space, which is really interesting because the reason you have to go medically get checkups if you utilize the invisibility cloak of the Morning Cloak is because you are physically wrapping yourself in paracausality, which, yeah, that's not good. Stuff like that. I've been just absorbed in CompCon, and it's been wild.
It's pretty nutty, honestly. I've done a lot of. I watched a video, but I also have been doing videos on Lancer stuff for a while now, and yeah, it's. I really wish they would release a world book or a universe book.
I really just want more, because then I get to the stuff I'm working on now, where I'm working on part 2, and it's talking about the origins of the Baylor, and I'm like, I want more of this. What the fuck is the Maw? Can you tell me more about the Maw and the prototype Baylor, please? I want to read about this.
Yeah, I like because I've read the entirety of the Long Rim book. It's actually not that big of a book. I actually double check. But I've read through all the Long Rim book because it has some of my favorite tables they've added for just random shit that you can get up to. And yeah, it's 68 pages is the Long Rim book. And they talk about some of the stations, and most of those 68 pages are just random tables, which I'm happy about. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to have a lot of random tables. But I just want more information. Like, this book also released a ton of mechs in it. Like, probably some of the most they released in a single one, because it's kind of like the advanced player's guide book, essentially. It's the one where they released the Atlas, the Caliban, the Kobold, the Lich, the Sun Z, and the Zhang.
Mm-hmm.
But
and, like, yeah, because oh god, because then every once in a while too, you get the other books. Because, like, for example, the Karakin Trade Baronies book has some fantastic lore, not fantastic mech lore. Because when I read things on, like, for example, the like the Orcus, great, cool ass mech, but damn, like when I read about it, it's like this mech is given to people in the trade baronies. It's like, oh, okay. Is there anything else? Is that it? Yes. Okay. Damn. And then I read about, like, the Emperor, and it's like, is there anything cool here? No. This flavor text goes raw as fuck. But is there anything here? No. Okay. Thank you. It's like, damn, please give me more. It's like, all it did was just make me like, there isn't a lot here, but it's written really well. But I want more substance so bad.
yeah. And, like, I haven't necessarily read all the books all the way through, but, like, even the Solstice Reign book, which is a full operation for, I think, license levels 0 to 6, it is 46 total pages, and they give you a little bit about the place. They give you some information, like a unique gear piece that you can get access to, and some other really cool things. And they talk about Chrysidium, which Chrysidium is very interesting because it is in the Cascade line. There's essentially these planets that the sovereignty are kind of looking over, and they've kind of just like they kind of just closed off this section of the galaxy. Many people on the planet of, like, Chrysidium don't know that there is Union or anything outside of, like, their immediate space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's super fascinating in this setting.
Oh,
I just I really wish they had more. And definitely it's kind of like, it alludes to one of the points, which is how much money do indies get for lore books usually. I don't know that it's actually that little, because I feel like people who would like Lancer would like a lore book. So I feel like it would already appeal to their audience.
I feel like it would, or at least, at the very least, one thing that I feel like would sell genuinely well if they could put together the money behind it. I feel like if they put out a Lancer comic, I feel like that would go so hard, because every time I showcase anything Lancer, that's the consistent bit I get when it comes to not anyone who's just not aware of Lancer's existence. It's people going, oh shit, this art is fantastic. Like, is this like from a comic or something like that? I want to read this. And it's like, oh no, this is a tabletop game. Or it's people being like, oh, I want more just like information about this. Like, not even just the game part of this.
Right.
I like, also just, yeah, like it's so much that people are writing their own. People are coming up with their own lore books and their own, like, third-party stuff.
Yeah.
Like, just, if they made their own, if they had the time, I'd love it. I just, that's my problem. It's like, I'm reading through Comic-Con stuff, and I'm like, man, it's written great. Like, I love how it's all written. I just wish there was more of it.
Yeah, it's something that I personally think a lot of games could really benefit from. And to be fair, Pathfinder does it, and they do really, really well with it. Many of the books especially second edition has been the bigger one they've been doing it for, and their books have done pretty decently well. So as far as like indie is concerned, I get that you have only so much money you can really work with, but I feel like if you want your tabletop game to succeed, you kind of have to all in on it. So, and a world book is funny enough, I think probably one of the easier things to make, because you don't have to make a bunch of balanced rule things in it. I mean, you probably should to some degree add some things that can, add to people's games, but like it's not the main point. The main point is just like a setting, essentially. And setting books have done really well in D&D too. So I feel like it's a pretty decent idea, and the more you get people obsessed with your setting, the better, because
To
that's
be
what
honest,
inspires tabletop.
I think they could even have a good chunk of the work kind of already done, because the core book, you could argue, already has a good chunk of it, because like the latter half of the core book basically does have a lot of setting information. Like it is an absurd amount. You can take that and fluff it up, add a lot more art, fancify it, make a book centered around that, like port that information over to a separate book, and then add more detail to everything around it, and like expand on it, make it justifiable to be put in a separate book with more stuff sold around it. That I think you could very understandably charge it as a separate product. I feel like that do well, and then sell it as a PDF, and that feels like business wise that would be a decent amount of time and money investment that you'd get a good return.
I don't really think so, because while it's very informative, the whole point of like a setting book or a world book is to give the reader, whoever it is, the player, GM, like locations to work and build off of, to go visit in game, things that like really put the viewer like in the setting. And a lot of it's very general, kind of basic lore.
That's why I think it could have some stuff to build around it, because it has like bits like for example, talking about like the on, and then okay, let's build on like that planet, or like it talks about like the Karakin trade baronies. All right, now we have the actual book, let's add some stuff to that. Or we have like the companies, okay, we've expanded on like their home worlds and like where their base of operations is. Here's the actual planets, because we know where like ISPN North Star sets up the planet is actually very interesting. Like, okay, here is a couple pages on if you were to visit the planet, and like have information like that. That's more what I mean. Having details where like that level of expanded on, because like it has the faction information that's like a page, but then extended out so it's like it gives you that detail. At least the beginning information is set out. It then just needs to have a little bit more. Because,
yeah, I
it does
mean,
need
I
to
don't know.
have the world information that's then able to be transferred to like a game.
Like one game I read recently that did it really well is actually like Kendall Obscura. Funny enough, I really like how they set it up, because
That makes sense that they would.
Because like it's all like one city, it's kind of focused around, but it is focused like, but it has like individual sections of the city, relevant people, organizations touched to that area, a brief descriptor, and like oftentimes like a little tidbit of information that's like, and here's an interesting thing going on here, or here's a story bite, that you can build off of. That's the kind of stuff that I want to see more in more games. And I guess we kind of like accidentally ran into the topic today. We're at like the 20-minute mark, so I might as well just keep on rolling into it. But tabletops in general need to innovate in like a lot of ways. And one of the absolute like number one ways tabletops really need to innovate is they need their setting and their world to be much easier to interact with the player base.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one thing that I see so many games, like even Pathfinder has some issue with it, because in the core book, in Legacy Core, I think in Player Core now, but maybe they moved that to GM Core. They have little blurbs about sections that like I was able to build off of, but it was not a lot, and the setting is so wild in so many places that to this day there are still regions in the world that I want to interact with that I have very little information to go off of. I had to go to the Pathfinder wiki to build something off of it. And it helps a lot that they have like the Mongi Expanse book and the Impossible Lands book and soon to the Qianxia book coming out for it. But that's several years after the game has like been a thing. And you want your world to be as inspiring to your players as the character concepts that you can play in that world, because it gives a lot of context to it. One of the games, funny enough, that have done it the best out of any of them is Anima Beyond Fantasy. To be fair, the core book didn't really have a lot. It had a few things. But then they released the world book, and my god, how much fun we had just going through the setting, because I used a lot of the story bites all throughout it. Many of the adventures that we had in many of our games were based on story bites from their book, from the world book.
I do think that's genuinely one of the best takeaways I took from the Animal like world book, and I think it's the one best thing I would ever give to like people trying to work on their own, is like just that element, because it's so smart.
Yeah.
If you're detailing out a world, just like it's such a smart little thing to do, of you detail out your world and then it's like, okay, you're in this location, sure, but some people work so well, just all you need to do is give them a tiny little nudge in like an idea, give them a plot hook, or just the idea of a plot hook, just give them a little push, just like have like, oh, here's a couple little quests that could happen in the area. That's such a smart idea.
Yeah, and we'll address the chat here in a moment, because there's some good points being made. But yeah, it's just, the thing is, tabletop is a game of imagination. That's like the whole thing, right? And so, what's like the biggest part of tabletop? It's the setting. It's the adventure you're going on. You want it to be as immersive and as interesting as possible, because, you know, in the end of the day, it's the thing you interact with more than anything. Even the simulationists out there who want their game to be 100% a simulation, you know, like they have to agree that they need a setting that's very well thought out to like properly interact with in a simulationist style, which is not even anything I agree with, but it's something that like so many games just leave unattended to. Muffin Hydra said, my opinion is setting information shouldn't be in the PHP type product, maybe not even DMG, but a separate entity altogether. Generally I agree. You got so much word count and you got so much you can work with. It probably shouldn't be in the same book, but it should be one of your first releases.
I mean, though, it should be at least accessible because, like, the player's handbook is going to be the thing people pick up, and like, people need to have an idea of what the kind of world is that they're going to be like getting. Because I mean, a rule book is like great and all, but you know, when you're picking up a book, you're like, okay, what's the vibe of the game? And then it's just, you know, a couple hundred pages on dice systems. Like, that's cool and all, but like, what kind of setting is this? You know, that's the first thing I would make.
I don't think what Muffin Hydra's saying is don't put anything in it. It's just a world, like a setting book, should be its own thing rather than mashed into the player's handbook, because it would just add a ton. But you definitely should. Your player's handbook definitely should outline what the setting is like in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I actually like this other point here. Be it a website, wiki, or a separate book, it should then, on the other hand, go deep on character creation in that setting. Yeah, so, like, you know what's funny? I would love if a tabletop came out and had an interactive, like, world website. Like, the whole setting, the world, and everything is on a website that you can go and read and flip through as, like, nice tabs you can go so you can find individual things that pairs with the release of a book. And even that could be something that you can easily, like, update, you know, without too much effort. Not that necessarily it's the most business sense thing, because that's a potential book you could be selling. But if Pathfinder can release, or if Pathfinder can have a website almost from the get-go, Archive and Nethys, that gives their whole game away for free and still be successful, I think a game could give their whole setting away for free and be successful. And I think even more so, that would be a better idea, because that would inspire people to check out your game, because they have a setting that they can look into and, like, kind of invest in.
I do think that just having some form of your game, like, one of the things I see pretty consistently for games that are doing, like, just absolutely on top, is having some form of tool or resource that is just available for free, or just, like, super easily, like, accessible to, like, more people. Just give it out to the most people, so then it's easier to just pull your friends in. Because, like, that's the part that I feel like is one of the best forms, the most popular forms of tabletop game marketing, is just word of mouth marketing. Because everyone's been in that situation of just, God, I need to convince my friends to actually fucking play this game with me. Please play this tabletop game with me. And so then it's easier when it's like, guys, do you want to play this game with me? By the way, all the rules, it's right here. We don't even have to pay for it. It's right here.
Well, see, and that's the thing with nerd hobbies in general, is if it's good, they will come. You know,
that's also true.
Like, you can release almost everything. Like, Warhammer technically is all free online, mostly because of Wahapedia and everything like that.
True, it is pretty accessible.
But people still spend ridiculous amount of money for the minis and the actual books, even though all the information you get is on Wahapedia.
Yeah, the minis it's really hard to get around, because either you need a printer or you need, like, the minis. There's the barrier of entry to physically play it is there. The books you can get around buying, unless you're doing, like, tournament play, because you have to show up with the books if you're doing tournament. But, you know, if you're not doing the tournaments, no one really cares.
Yeah. And so it's like, if your thing is fun enough, like, legitimately, there are so many IPs out there that like are piratable, like anime, for instance. Like, there's so many animes out there that, like, you can watch for free because you can just go to an anime website, and people do that, and then they get super invested in it, and then they're like, oh man, see that $300 figure? I'm gonna buy that because I really love this anime. You know, I don't know all the logistics, so you know, this is not business advice, but Lancer's so cool. If Lancer was to release a world book, I would buy it.
Same.
With hands down, with no, like, I bought Longram because I was hoping it'd be a little bit something like that, and it did add some things. And there's the other books I definitely need to buy at some point, but if a TTRPG game of any TTRPG game had a really banger setting that I didn't have to read books, like a bunch of book series on, like I know D&D actually has a really cool setting that's been touched by many very good writers. I'm not gonna go read all the Dritz books just to get that, you know. I would like something that's presented to me for the intent of being used in tandem with their TTRPG. And
I
not a lot of
know the
games do
Dritz
that.
books are good, but I'm not gonna read them. I don't have the time. Yeah, because like if Lancer came out with a, especially if like they came out with a banger world book and it was physical, the physical one's a harder ask.
Yeah. I mean, like, even if it's a PDF, I think it would be very doable for a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
So,
immediate purchase. That's a pre-order right there.
Michael Twilling also mentioned earlier that he said, they said, I would like to see more mechanics similar to the Call of Cthulhu's luck mechanic. I think the idea of being able to literally run out of luck and die/fail a critical skill check is really interesting. Monster of the Week does something similar to this. It's kind of like it's kind of like your core HP mechanic in a sense, because creatures in that game are super dangerous and do butt tons of damage, many of which can instantly start your character bleeding out with one hit. And you have to bypass that with luck if you don't want to just die. I like... What are you gonna say?
Or sometimes just like there's something where it's like if I don't like get a 12, like this thing will slap me back and kill me, or like I can get the killing blow. I know I can if I get a 12 here. Like it builds up like that level of decision, but you know that meter fills up.
Yeah. I like meta story point mechanics in games because tabletop in its randomness is fun inherently, I think, but what makes stories interesting is characters beating the odds, you know. And sometimes it would just be a lot cooler if you kind of like succeeded a thing.
True.
And having a limited system where you can do that at the player's discretion, I think is fun. It lets you succeed at the things you want to succeed at, and it's something that's like if you overplay, you end up failing at what could be a critical part, and potentially putting your character at risk. So I like ideas of mechanics behind that. Actually, funny enough, one of the main topics for this chat, this particular topic for the day, is I was thinking about it because I've been doing some research. I've been trying to think about what I can do on this channel to make tabletop more interesting to more people. And I've been looking at a lot of other tabletop channels, and the channels that do well are D&D channels. First of all, it's like not even close, and that's mostly because it's a setting that everyone likes, or at least everyone knows and can get invested in. And going through and looking at a lot of stuff, the thing with tabletop is it's very hard to make tabletop interesting to an outside person, like in any way. And that's because tabletop is kind of antiquated at this point in a lot of ways. There has not been a ton of innovations, and legitimately, honestly, there's not many tabletops out there that I would say are like 100% complete products. And what I mean by that is a lot of tabletops feel like they're missing something. They feel like, oh, I wish they expanded more in this or that. And like everyone has that about like any game, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the same about like any art or any product, really. It's
But the
like
thing
there's
is,
like any video game, any movie, you're just like, man, if only they went deeper into like this theme, this mechanic, this thing that they made.
but the thing with tabletop specifically is tabletop is always such a vague thing because it's a game of the imagination, you know. A lot of it is just kind of left open for people to interact with. And there's just a lot of games that like you're doing something and you're asked, how do I do this? And the game doesn't have an answer for you. You know, it's very vague. And one of the few game systems I feel like are very complete that you can do pretty much anything without having to really worry about it is Pathfinder 2nd Edition, because it has all the mechanics necessary for pretty much anything you could want to do. Like it has a lackluster social mechanic, I admit, but it still has stuff. And it like you want to build or you want to work on a project, right? Well, that's where you have your income table come from, you know, where what you do on the income table enhances or adds to your project. Like, oh, okay, you want to make a siege engine. Well, a siege engine's like 2,000 gold. You need, but we have the income table to be like, okay, so if you have this many crafters working on it doing, you know, approximately 3 gold per day, you would need so many people over so many days and you can make a seed engine, you know. And that can be broken down into a lot of different things as well. It could be like you want to bribe a city official in the city. You can actually translate the income system to systems like that where it's just like, okay, you're working on them, and so the income turns into like points to convince that person to do something. Like there's a lot of ways that it can be done. A lot of tabletop games are very shallow, don't really offer a ton. Like Lancer would be a complete game in my opinion if it fixed two things. One, if it gave us a setting to actually work off of, work within, you know, like something, a set of systems or anything. And two, if pilots felt impactful into the story. Because your pilot's only as impactful in the story as you make them based on how you roleplay them. It's all based on how your player acts. No choices you make, nothing you really can do out like with the game's mechanics can make your character more or less interesting other than just how you play.
It's very GM specific. If the GM wants wants the pilots to take more, otherwise it's like you could just fast forward through any pilot stuff.
Yeah. Because there's just no mechanics that work on the pilots. Pathfinder, I would struggle to find anything other than just, I wish they had more. Like, I wish they'd do more world setting stuff. I wish there was more this, that, or whatever. But, like, it has all the building blocks. You can just play with a lot of it. Like, Anima was the same way. Granted, I wish they had all the tables they said they were using. But Anima gave you so much. Like, we did so much with the world setting and everything. It was really, really good. Like, the game system could have been better, but I feel like overall it was kind of a more complete product. But if you look at a lot of tabletop games out there nowadays, a lot of them are very shallow, don't really offer a ton, and honestly are just kind of ports. Like, here's how you play Dark Souls using a D&D-esque system, you know?
Though, I mean, granted, I feel like someone could say the exact same thing about like, uh, I guess for example, Lancer, because like Anima has so many flaws, so many complete flaws, as we've discussed many a time. But
Mm-hmm.
like the completeness of a product that we got out of it is because of the level of investment that we put into it,
Mm-hmm.
and like specifically
Well,
you put into it, because you fixed a lot of the issues that Anima had.
yeah.
You put in that time and fixed it. So like for example, like all those elements of like your those two issues that you have with Lancer. If so then if there are like for example, people out there that can get or even are saying like having a more completed product of Lancer because they've went out and put the work in and have invested that work and have created it. Now they're like, yeah, my Lancer is a complete product, and I have that exact same level of investment and that exact same level of experience and product from Lancer. So like, it's just that part, that specific, I guess, framing of it feels like a matter of perspective.
Well, I disagree because again, Anima does have a lot of tables, a lot of systems. A lot of the reasons why I was able to work Anima the way I did was because it actually had a lot of framework around it. I wouldn't say Anima is it necessarily a complete product. Like, again, the only game I feel like I've ever played that's been a real full like complete product is Pathfinder Second Edition, and that's because the game runs so well that you can easily put things in it or even take some things out of it and it still keeps running really, really well, and you don't really need to like ask questions like in Anima. There's a lot of things. Skills need to be reworked in Anima, or they need to have more impact put on them, because skill checks can just be like a, yeah, use this skill, I guess. And there's
I
a
mean,
lot
yeah,
of skills that
inherently it
are
has to be reworked.
there's a lot of skills that are also like pointless. I had to combine like 3 skills into a singular skill once.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
the difference of like Pathfinder is one of the games where I feel like we of the games that we've all played, homebrew is completely unnecessary. Either by that I mean functionally unnecessary. As an Anima, we needed homebrew to function and to physically
yeah,
play the game that we were trying to play. For Lancer, for example, it has homebrew for the fact of enjoyment. People make homebrew content because they like the game so much and that they simply want more of it, and then they're designing it on their own time rather than this game needs it for it to function. But people do invest their time to make a lot more detailed mechanics because they just simply like the game as a framework to add, their own stuff to it.
yeah, and like that's the thing, is a game should be something that like it's really good and you can add for your enjoyment on top of it. But like it should be something that like is a complete package around it, without, you don't need to like have to homebrew to run the game. Uh and Anima, like I argue you have to. So I'm not trying to say that Anima is a complete product. But again, I'll say it has done a lot, because there's actually a lot like in the setting. There's a lot of things you can do. They do give some rough frameworks with some of the tables on a lot of things. A lot of it could be made more specific. A lot of it could be balanced better. But like Anima at least gave you enough in a lot of different places to kind of make things. But in Lancer, like your pilot is your pilot. That's it. Like there's not really anything else to work off of to make the pilot better than just inventing new things. And uh, someone just said, I think, let's see, I think it'd be a mistake to try and make a mechanic for everything. Mechanics are a very powerful way to express the theme of a game, and they ought to be memorable and important. It, well, I
I do
mean, yeah,
agree because mechanic
obviously,
bloat sounds like a nightmare.
yeah, obviously I'm not when I'm talking about like giving pilots mechanics to do more stuff. I just want value in choice. A game is a game when you have things that you can do differently like every time, pretty much. Pilot skills, as Dead Phoenix has said here, uh, they're you can have your triggers, but they're so vague that you can pretty much do anything if you argue hard enough for it, and that's the part I dislike. I don't like games that are like very homogenous with some systems where you can have many skills do the same thing if you just word it differently, because that doesn't bring value to choices. That just brings flavor to your choices, which I think is important, but uh definitely not something that I feel like makes the game better. Like, here's a really good example of a game that should be complete and just isn't, and that's D&D 5e. D&D 5e gives you so much to work with when it comes to like the setting and all the items and the creatures and how the classes come together and the multi-classing. Like, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, Baldur's Gate 3, game of the year, and we had a lot of fun with it. But even Baldur's Gate 3 had to homebrew a lot of stuff to make it work, and the problem is in D&D is I understand the idea of, well, we don't want to tell players every little thing because we want them to make it work for their setting. But if you don't give a frame of reference for what things should be, your players will just be lost because they don't know how it scales in your game. For instance, item prices for anything above a potion. You know. Also, why is plate mail well, I guess it's a little bit more understandable, but still, like, why is plate mail so ridiculously expensive?
Yeah, the economy in 5e that they set up. I remember reading something about how the economy they set up is just functionally like the wildest thing ever. Like
Yeah.
it makes no sense. It sounds like because it seems arbitrary. They threw the numbers at, and then meanwhile, like Pathfinder at least feels like it's more thought out.
The prowess weapon skills they added to Baldur's Gate 3 are great, and is often stuff you can do in Pathfinder 2 all day. Yeah, exactly.
It's like the best parts of the best parts of Baldur's Gate is the Larianisms, not even the D&D isms.
Yeah.
Because like some of the stuff I remember seeing people like talk about, like, oh, this part of Baldur's Gate was like my favorite. It's like those are those were some mechanics I recognized from Divinity. I remember
Yeah.
encountering that.
Crafting in D&D is a nightmare.
Yeah. What is it like? You can't craft anything over like 50 or 100 gold.
You can make potions, and that's about all they want you to do with crafting.
That's stupid.
Which is ridiculous. Creature CR makes no sense whatsoever.
Completely broken, and it seems like they have zero intention of ever fixing it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I can just go on and on and on about what D&D 5e is missing. And that's the thing. That's a game that has so many books. So many books released. Several books released trying to fix some of the problems from prior books. Like, making Rangers not suck. Actually, they are fixing. Well, we'll see, because I've been hearing a lot of stuff, and from what I've been seeing, it's not all coming together is the problem. There's not really a cohesiveness to a lot of the stuff they're fixing.
If they are fixing CR, that's at least a very, very good thing, because that does need to just be fixed, because you need to have like the just
Be
normal
right back.
scaling. normal level scaling is one of the easiest and most basic things because the amount of nightmare experiences I've had with just amateur GMs who don't know how to scale encounters, or just my own trying to learn how to like use CR and have monsters for when I was trying to learn. It's just a nightmare. It just doesn't make sense. And it just led to the development of like, okay, so is the only way I can like actually give my players a challenge is just have nebulous HP for my monsters, and that was the only way I could do it because it's just I couldn't rely on CR, the mechanics they set up, because it was just too broken and didn't work or make sense. I mean, yeah, XP D&D is not great either. It's just there's a lot of just general issues, and it's just the problem of like it's just the business model is how I always kind of view it too. Is they're in a business model where like releasing books isn't the most best way to move forward, which is why they're trying to push really hard to go into a subscription base system because they want to push for D&D Beyond because at the size they are, the best way they can monetize a game at their size is simply by having a monthly subscription service. But that's just going to be a step in a direction that's very new for the tabletop market. That's going to be a sell that they're trying to do very piecemeal, that they're going to push out with this new edition slash not edition slash whatever it actually is. So whatever they finalize with, all I know is every playtest material I have seen has looked very boring because it just seems like they're going with the patch system of instead of elevating everything to be fun, they are nerfing everything that is fun to interact with. So and there isn't that much that I find super fun to interact with in D&D anyways. That's what I'd call an incomplete game. D&D is a game about fighting monsters and tactical combat adventuring, so his mechanic needs to be perfect. I'm less worried about crafting rules. It depends too, because I mean, there are classes based around roughly that. I mean, there's one class, the Artificer. I feel like if you have a class that is about like making technologically creating like magical stuff, you should have crafting rules that can work around that. But I mean, yeah, they should have at least some interesting combat rules, and it really is just like stand still and roll your d20 simulator, like without anything really else that you can do. Or spells that are did the other enemy succeed on a save? Cool, nothing happens. Or other stuff. There's just a lot of little weird hurdles that 5th edition has. That's the other thing that's been going on. It sounds like they barely have a vision and just have been reacting to every complaint the players have. That's the thing I've been kind of noticing about it too. It's highly reactive, where it feels like every single piece of feedback they get, they are overcorrecting really hard. Which is where what I've been saying is that it feels like there's somebody that's been pulling the strings, like trying to like dangle it. Is that true or not? Is that at like the director level? Is that at a higher level? Who knows? But it makes it feel like it's very directionless. But it puts a really weird taste in that. I don't know. I'm very curious. Don't get me wrong. I'm very interested. But it's just weird. See, I mean, that's also the problem. The Paladin's Might thing. As someone who likes Paladin, yawn, snooze. I don't know. I also just inherently like don't care if it's like this thing was abusable. I don't. I think if a class has something abusable, I feel like it's significantly more interesting and more fun to just have other classes have access to things that are abusable or more interesting. It's like, whatever. The smite is fun because it throws a lot of big damage out. Okay, give other classes access to methods of doing big damage. whatever. And also, like, I mean, Paladin is just the most fun class for that big reason of smiting. It's like the one fun decision I get to make as a Paladin in D&D is whether or not I get to add all the like 6d8s to my swing. Artificer is very cool. It does sit in a really weird state because it both feels like it's part of D&D and also doesn't. I get what you mean there. Yeah, I see people complain about Paladins only getting one smite per turn. Sounds like they were daring to balance the game and people went up in arms. It's a very poor way to balance the game, which, to be fair, I don't think they're very concerned about anyways. Yeah. No, Paladins don't have any other reason for those spell slots. So, shush. I am gonna be in pain when you play a Paladin that does things other than smite. It's gonna hurt me. It's gonna hurt me too. Devin's harassing me in chat.
I know. I heard.
Yeah, because also the part is I know that his character is going to be likable.
Yeah.
And so that's what's going to make it harder.
Yeah. You gotta like him in character, but hate him on a fundamental level. That's
the hard part is that happens, and also it's going to be harder because I'm playing a character who, if you just like stroke the ego of him and like are nice to him, he will like you back. So, you know, it's easy to get him to like you. But then me on the outside being fucking smite, just smite once, please.
I think it's a mistake to treat balance in a game like D&D the same way you treat balance in a competitive game like League of Legends or Warhammer. You don't have to treat it that way. And when people talk about balance, I don't think hopefully they're not talking about doing the same in like a competitive setting, because
they're talking about it in like D&D where they're nerfing Paladin because the smite is overpowered. Is like the way they're treating it, with having its own Paladins can now only smite once per turn.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that's that bad at all. Honestly, but. Like, for instance,
I think it's not bad for them to be able to smite because, like, you're burning a resource.
Yeah, but doing it once per turn, they still do a lot of damage with a singular hit.
Yeah, but you're also burning a resource in return, so, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you can choose when you smite, so you just strike twice, and then if you crit one of them, that's the one you do it on. So,
yeah. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a change that like needed to happen or matters. It just
I disagree. I think gating power is important because you also like it also can help prevent players from kind of blowing their load a little too early.
A paladin being able to one-shot a boss is good.
I disagree.
I like that as a player who likes playing paladin. And you know what they should nerf instead? Something like Druid, because Druids are lame.
See, to be fair, in D&D, one of the big things players love about D&D is how unbalanced the game is sometimes. I see it all the time talking about, oh yeah, you can do this really crazy thing. Which is like using this weird combination so that you can one-shot the boss, you know, like people like that. And I think that's fine, right? So, like, the whole point of this conversation is not to invalidate, like, if you like games that are not complete by, like, any definitions we come up with, that's fine. You can enjoy that. I'll use D&D as an example to show how a game can be designed in a way that's frustrating to use as either a player or a GM. Because legitimately, like, Ranger being one of my favorite classes in games, was so unplayable for the first few years of D&D. and that sucks. It's very sad. But like, talk about the general idea of balance in tabletop. Like Pathfinder does it really well, where the characters are balanced, but they're balanced in different ways that interact with different parts of the game. For instance, martial characters do more damage single target than spellcasters do. Like, it's not even close. And that's completely okay. Why? Because when it comes to area damage, spellcasters reign supreme. So that each player gets to feel good about the way they interact with the thing without necessarily stepping on each other's toes to do it. Unlike in D&D, where a caster can do as much or more single target damage as a martial character, and also can warp reality. Which, you know, there's a lot of very valid questions of why would I not play a wizard in D&D.
Wizards, yeah. Sometimes I feel that playing a bard in D&D, because like one thing I notice is like, man, I feel it the most with in the comparison of playing a spellcaster in D&D and Pathfinder, where I'm like, the fact of failing a spell in Pathfinder is significantly feels fairer, and it just is just a better experience than in D&D, because like, it feels like your DCs are calculated on a much fairer basis when it comes in Pathfinder, because it feels like the math is so much tighter. And on the other hand, the spells are designed in such a way where, like, you know, it never feels like you're wasting a slot. And then also the fact that, like, also for like my issue with, like, when it comes to then spell saves is like, bards have next to no spells that require like attack rolls. All my spells are spell saves, so I have to interact with spell saves basically all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like that's my hurdle, where it's like, damn, spell casting in D&D is hurtful sometimes.
And it's not that I don't see the value in having a game that like isn't so focused on balance for the purpose of cool stuff. Anima is very much a game that was like that. But the problem is, the thing is, in D&D, good builds are abusable builds by the consensus of a good number of people on the internet. Not everyone, of course. Play your games how you want to play your games, of course. But a lot of people are like, yeah, no, if you're not doing this combo, or if you're playing a wizard and not doing this, you're actually making your character intentionally weaker. In Pathfinder, that's just not the case. Every class can shine, and while you can nerf your character, you have to very intentionally try to nerf your character to the point where the whole point of the character is to make a bad character. And that's why, even though a lot of people really like D&D, Pathfinder technically just gives you more options, because like every class actually works. And you're not trying to compete with people doing absurd amounts of damage at like level 3. It's something where, does Oracle shine? Yeah, Oracle's good. It feels like it has to go through extra hurdles to do its thing, but Oracle has access to some of the best focus spells in the game, bar none.
Yeah, I remember. I forget exactly which ones, but I remember on a TableTalk, especially, you pointing out exactly how goofy good Oracle could get. Because I've doubted the Oracle's ability before.
Yeah.
And then I've had to take it back.
I like skill feats because they have to make your character feel more organic. Skill feats can be optimized, but they don't have to be, and you can still be a badass. Yeah, that's a great thing about Pathfinder, is you can do whatever you want. Sorry, what's up?
I love skill feats. I just gotta say.
Yeah.
I love picking Skill feeds so much.
So, you know, like when I'm talking about a game being a complete product, like we've been talking about, I'm mostly just talking about a game that has at least systems everywhere, so there's some value in everything, and more particularly, uh, being like Pathfinder, where it doesn't really matter what you do, you can do something. Like Lancer, I think, has pretty good balance between the mech frames. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but a lot of the mech frames do something so specifically that you're getting what you bought into, essentially. Like, you're not looking at Lancer frames necessarily and being like, oh, what's the most damage I can do? Because you can kind of make most of the frames do a ton of damage, especially with talents. Uh, the whole point of like mech frames are what fun, silly mechanics do you want to work with in the game to do your own kind of thing. And like when we played our whole season of Lancer, and I don't think any player felt necessarily bad about their choices.
No,
Hi Gray, how you doing?
I think the part that made that was really interesting to encounter was when I picked up I was picking up Genghis levels, and I also for the final fight I actually switched to try out I tried out a Genghis frame, and just how different interacting with the battlefield felt. Like it was a significant difference just playing a different form of DPS. Which I mean, obviously, playing a different character would feel different. But like I had the same licenses, just all I did was switch the frame, and it was significantly different. Which I think is something that's really interesting about it, because like our final fight was us fighting another Lancer team. And so like the idea of, oh god, yeah, if we had like even a couple of our mechs switched out, how differently that fight could have gone with like just abilities interacting is what makes it so interesting.
Yeah. And let's see, Dice Media Group here said the problem with Pathfinder is that because everyone can be everything, world building is a problem, so restrictions are also important. Yeah, uh, I would say that's definitely something you could talk about. I don't think that's a problem with Pathfinder as much as it is with the setting from a conceptual level. But the thing is that even in Pathfinder's setting, not everyone can actually be everything. You can't be a cleric or champion unless you're chosen by a god, first of all, or a pantheon, or one of the other like deity-esque powers. Wizarding typically takes a lot of schooling in lore, even though players kind of like skip that. I'm normally Miller Bode. I don't know. I don't think you've been on our table talks too much, even as Miller Bode, but maybe I'm mistaken. Glad you're here regardless. I disagree. They have maintained overlap between classes. For example, Witch's Cauldron is nowhere near as useful as being an actual alchemist. Wait. Is this an argument with someone else? Because I don't know what that's referring to. On Twitch. New Core is also weird. But like in setting, many normal people can't do like everything, because you can't just be a barbarian. If you're an NPC, you have to come from an area where barbarians are from. And player characters in any TTRPG are always stated to be unique in some form or fashion. So you can't really base the idea of a player character as like the standard for a world setting. I definitely think that there are problems with the idea that adventurers are actually somewhat common in the setting. I mean, the Pathfinder Society is all about that. In which case, a lot of problems seems like they should. It's the whole, how is there crime in New York problem that comic books
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, it's the that general issue. I forget. It sounds like one of those questions that is answered in Marvel. But yeah, it's like the main thing of it's just like it's one of those situations that's kind of hand waved of like the question you don't ask it so we can have the stories to be told, but it's like no, this is a question that is something we gotta wonder. It's like what why aren't there level 20 people dealing with this issue? Why is the level 5 man dealing with this like god returning to the world, you know?
Right. And
Why
I
isn't
mean,
there
like,
a problem?
sometimes it makes sense, other times it doesn't. Uh, it really depends on the narrative. Uh, and there's all kinds of things. Like in Lancer, it makes sense because one, your character is a Lancer pilot who is a one of millions of millions. Like many people go into the Lancer program, and very few make it out of the Lancer program. And even the ones that do don't survive long as Lancer pilots because their work is absurdly dangerous. And
Yeah.
also, universe big. So, the fact that there's only one Lancer in a system is not unusual.
It's also the bit of I always liked how Warhammer did it, especially Warhammer Fantasy with how it related to the like the role play side of it, because 40K does it in the galaxy big, all that kind of jazz too. Warhammer Fantasy always did it in the like, yeah, why aren't the big names dealing with it? And the answer is they are, and the problems they're dealing with are significantly more scary than the ones you are. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Because it's like, yeah, where's Teclis? Why isn't he dealing with this? Like, he has his own problems. Leave him alone.
Yeah, I mean, in Warhammer, everything is going wrong all the time everywhere.
Yeah.
So, it
Warhammer
makes
Fantasy, the
sense.
world's literally coming apart and ending. Like, most things where the Warhammer, like, a fantasy setting is happening, give it 20 years, the world will be, like, gone. Because the Ever Chosen has already been assigned, and he is marching down from the north. So, like, shit's bad.
Yeah. One of the huge problems is people that write modules for the Pathfinder play Theater of the Mind often not know what the monsters do and what power is really on the board. Uh, that's if I try to analyze what you're trying to say here, is people who are writing the modules are just throwing monsters out without realizing like who or what is available in the setting. No, that's not the case at all. It's more of that's the whole point of an adventure path is it is a particular narrative in a particular story, and while adventures are canon, they're not localized. They can be like literally anywhere. And typically when they make adventure paths, they're in very disparate and different parts of the world. And many of the actually in lore important people who are very powerful are uh are doing something currently. They're fighting the Whispering Tyrant or whatever. The problem more is just that because adventure paths are technically like canonical with each other, there should just be a lot of adventures in the setting. Whatever. It's not that the writers aren't thinking about it. It's just it's like writing DC Marvel comics, like Alex was saying earlier. You just kind of have to assume that everyone else is busy to make it actually work in a setting where
It's the thing you just have to kind of deal with, sadly, because it's the sad state of it of it's the idea of like pointing out the plot hole, where the plot hole is, yeah, well, if we examine that plot hole, that means the story can't happen. and we need the story to happen, so we have to come up with the justification of why the story can take place in the first place. It's something I was actually examining, funnily enough, today, because I was playing, I got it on, like, the Humble Bundle package earlier, the Marvel Midnight Suns game, which I gotta say, actually, pretty fun game, but it did have a sequence in New York that is literally just that. The, New Yorkers are incredibly used to just random superhero fights taking place in the middle of the street.
Yeah. I
Because
find that funny.
Doctor Strange opened a portal in the middle of Manhattan, and Blade, your character, and Doctor Strange walk out of it, and New Yorkers are just walking past you and the portal without moving. Because they're just like, fucking move it, man. And like they just bump into you wearing full plate mail and 2 swords on your back, and then Blade just shrugs at you and keeps walking. And then a guy just like takes a picture of Blade and keeps walking. And it's like, yeah, okay, this is how you like immediately like make the point of this is normal without pointing out like, yeah, let's make a giant plot point of like making fun of the idea that they're just making fun of the idea that this shit happens in New York all the time without like, hey, where is everybody? It's just, yeah, for some reason this just keeps happening.
In Vampire, I always felt like there were too many supernatural beings in every town. Yeah.
That's what they're adjusting in 5th edition, which is something that I actually was talking about in the comments of a last video of mine. It's the massive tone shift that they're pushing for the current 5th edition of World of Darkness. Because 20th anniversary and like sessions before, World of Darkness was a lot more of like, I think, grander horror. And also, yeah, do not use a census using every single rulebook. I like it because of how stupid it is. I think it's really funny to do the Avengers Endgame, every supernatural creature is here. Because it's funny and it gets entertaining. But that's because I like stupid in my games. And I think all the World of Darkness lore is fun. But on the other hand, it gets really unreasonable really quick. But one of the reasons that they're doing the beckoning to the Middle East and getting rid of all of the the big elders is because of that, because it was getting really unreasonable that all of these vampires were in basically every single level of society without being noticed. And so the 5th edition is pushing for personal horror, pushing for vampires having to be pushed harder into the deeper recesses of society to actually keep the masquerade from slipping, because it's currently slipping really hard with everybody having a camera in their pocket at all times. And the fact that just it's getting harder and harder to stay active, and then the fact that vampires are dying out a lot quicker as the blood is thinning. So like that is what 5th edition is addressing. For better or for worse, because the 5th edition has its own problems mechanically, but you know, it is a fair thing to bring up, like that general idea. And see, like that's the thing. It's the idea of it's what kind of vibe do you want? Because I also really do love the angsty 90s vibe of like early Vampire. I think it's really fun. I think both have their merits. It depends which one you want. But I also really love vampires interacting with, you know, wizards, mummies, fairies, like all of that. It's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, wizards are technically one of the fewest, like, members out there.
There's not many of them.
It's like a 1 in so many tens of thousands chance. And even then, they still have to, like, successfully go through their awakening without being driven mad. Which happens a lot. So, I mean, like, it makes sense. Werewolves where it gets a little crazy. Same with the Kindred. All the other stuff, at least, they're better hidden, typically. Like, if you're talking about the fairies.
The mummies, the fairies, at least, the fae, a lot of times, they stay in a different plane of existence. Same with the wraiths. At least they stay somewhere else. Mage is goofy, because the magic system inherently, but, like, I think mage is fun. Werewolf can be. It's just the kind of thing of the idea, if you are going to mix those systems, the idea of, say, for example, you're playing a vampire game, if you're going to have any of those other supernatural creatures, you have a single mage in your chronicle,
Yeah.
like one character, or maybe they encounter a single werewolf and that's it. And like, they interact with vampires, they interact with maybe like 10 or 15, because even like bloodlines, like the bloodlines game, there aren't even like that many actual kindred you deal with. I think there's like 20ish in the 4 districts of California that you talk to.
Yeah, so I mean, like, when you actually look at the setting, typically there's not like a lot. If anything breaks the immersion of a setting, it's players in a particular like chronicle wanting to be like a kindred from every different bloodline, for
Yeah.
instance. That's the part that doesn't make sense. Same thing with werewolf. I think even more
Werewolf's
especially in
worse.
werewolf.
Werewolf is worse because they specifically are from different regions.
Yeah.
Vampire, at least it can get around it because like some of them, only some can be like really locked away. Some clans are like more often linked with like the Sabbat, for example. Some are more linked with like the Camarilla. Some are a lot more like intrinsically linked. And then thankfully there's a lot more of the coteries that are like kind of just a random ragtag of like, this is for the party, which I think is the Watchman is very clearly set up to be like, this is just a pretty good stock like tabletop group setting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, either the Watchmen or the like the Secret Police one, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Some French name.
There's a couple that are just like, this is a really good very wide blanket for you to cast like your group in.
Yeah, your particular chronicle. Or your coterie. It's and we've kind of gotten off topic here, but like another thing that I feel tabletop really needs to work on in general is innovating the scene. Some games have done some very interesting things to innovate, but there's just a lot of sacred cows in tabletop. There's a lot of things in general that need to be messed around with. First of all, like, I was definitely more of the opinion that like combat always had to be turn-based to make it work in tabletop, because can't have people talking over each other. But playing some Monster of the Week and looking at some other games in similar, like, those are not turn-based encounters, and yet they work just fine. The level of strategy you have might be more lacking than in other games, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done. That can't like break our conceptions of how combat can go or what games can do. I mean, the very fact that most tabletop games use dice it's actually super unnecessary in a lot of ways. Dice is just
don't use them.
Dice is just a probability device that we use. And in an era that is progressively, like, literally everyone has a super intelligent computer in their pocket all the time, we should be making use of that, because it's not a thing that, like, people don't really have anymore. Unless you're one of those people who breaks their phone. But, that's just kind of on you. Skill issue, really.
It's this thinking that led to the Jenga tabletop system rule set being created.
Yeah,
I forget what the system name is.
Dread, I think.
It looks. I want to try that. It sounds really fun, but I don't know how you do it virtually. Because like,
yeah, you would need some virtual Jenga tower thing.
Yeah.
There's like what, Seven Candles, I think it's called, or
yeah, Seven
like
Candles is another one.
There are games that do some very interesting things, but like more than anything, I've grown to detest the D20 more and more as time goes on. because it's such a wide range of probability that like some nights you just have feels bad man moments because you can't roll above a 10. It's just like constantly failing coin flips over and over and over. Pathfinder does a good job of fixing it for the most part, but early level feels pretty rough.
Yeah, later level Pathfinder I think feels a lot better.
It does, for sure, because your characters are very typically skilled, and the balancing kind of evens out a little bit more with AC and everything, but early level, it's a little rough.
You know, it's like mechanics that I think can mess with it or that are really interesting. Because it was something that was pointed out to me in the Discord today. Of all things, the Monty Python tabletop system, because it has the serious and silliness dice system, where the dice range based on how serious and silly the check is based off of like the dice size, like D20 to D2.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an interesting mechanic because it was talking about me, Doomer posting about the Discworld game that just got announced because I'm genuinely worried that it could be bad, but we'll see. Which also is only because like it was something we touched on earlier, the idea of like your setting and then how it can be like run with players. Because I genuinely struggle to picture how a lot of players can run a game in Discworld with it actually feeling like Discworld. And then also mechanically making something feel like Discworld in a game system, in a system where like, or a setting where like it's fantasy because it's making fun of fantasy and using the tropes of fantasy to like comment on, criticize like our world, comment on the tropes of fantasy, like a lot of stuff like that. And the only other thing I could see is mechanically having a system for like what is funniest in the moment, or even like messing with fate itself, because that's a big deal, is directly gamifying Destiny, because a lot of characters do that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, and that's the thing, right?
I'm certain it can be good, but like I still have my like my worries, because it specifically is a property that has been adapted horribly so many.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like innovation is about finding solutions to problems people didn't know they had a lot of the
Yeah.
time. And I definitely think that there is a lot of room to mess around in tabletop to just have different things, have different ways of interacting with the game. Because in the end, like the whole premise of tabletop is it's a game in your head having narrative experiences with a group of people. And like literally last Monster of the Week we played, we rolled 0 dice. It was all role play.
It was.
And that's fine. I don't think every session should be that way necessarily, because otherwise it's not really a game.
You're just gotta talk.
But like having different ways of interacting, and it's like like a video game when you're playing as Master Chief, the only random element is your skill level from moment to moment. You know what I mean? And in tabletop, well, that's a lot harder to represent, obviously. I still feel like there are different ways that you can interact with it without even using dice. More cards. I loved how Deadlands initially was like had a mix between dice and cards. Like when you did initiative, you pulled from a deck of cards for your initiative.
Yeah.
And you played that way. Definitely caused some extra steps in the initiative process, but it was fun. It was interesting. It gave the game a very strong feel for its aesthetics and theme.
Also, Dead Phoenix, I will say, I do not think it will be that, because it will not be a 5e thing. At least I don't think so. because it is going to be developed by Modifius. Yes, Modifius, who did the Dune and the Fallout systems, which apparently they're both very good. I've heard very good things about both games, but they're 2D20 systems. Though I don't know much else about them. I'm gonna have to look into the Dune one because I've heard nothing but good things specifically about the Dune Adventures in the Imperium system. But that is the group that is developing it, and we're gonna get more news in 2024. Though it seems pretty unlikely that it's gonna be a 5e supplement. If it is, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
Yeah. It's the one thing you don't want to see on any product nowadays is that little 5e die in the corner.
Quite literally, my first thought was like, if this is a 5e supplement, I'll die. And then the next thought was like, funnily enough, one of the better unique dice mechanics that'd be suited for Discworld is the Adventure Time original mechanics that they show. The yes and dice that they talked about. That would work really well for Discworld because its entire book, like how the vibes kind of are. Like there is combat kind of, but like the books are very banter heavy. It's just like of like the large combat or like just, tense situations, one of the strongest ones in my head is specifically some of the guard characters trying to formulate a situation where they could say the sentence, it's 1,000,000 to 1 odds, but it might just work. So they could shoot an arrow at a dragon where it'll pierce the separation of his scales and bring him down. Which, required like putting a bandana over your head, standing on one foot, and like putting your tongue in the air, like thing like that. Because, fantasy tropes are a real thing in the universe that are like functional laws of reality. So like, if it is truly 1,000,000 to 1 odds, it might just work.
Sorry for y'all getting pinged by my Discord, getting some messages from one of the mods. But yeah, I don't know. Here's an interesting one. Simple is really good. So if you want to speed up a game, every 10 hit points is 1 hit. Taking math out of the game works. I mean, there's definitely, I think, ways to optimize for games, for sure. And, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is, like, innovate. Bring new systems. Like, I legitimately don't know why you can't have a more balanced, like, random number generator system. It's my ping. Sorry, William. Like, done through, like, a phone app. Or something, Because, like, again, everyone has phones, And to be fair, even if you don't have a phone, there can still be other more analog games. Like, just because one game innovates with technology doesn't mean all games have to. The whole point of, like, innovations or people trying new things in the fields is to make things, to see if they work, and to, make everything better, to bring systems that might inspire new ideas. A lot of tabletop nowadays really falls super hard onto the D&D 5e to the D&D like 3.5 methods of creation. Are you playing face to face? I mean, does that matter for the conversation? Because we play online because we have to. Most people we play with are not online, or are not in the same, like, state as us sometimes. And nowadays, especially, it's incredibly difficult to find people to play with. So the thing is that realistically making solutions only for in-person play is not a very good system for dealing with the majority of tabletop players. So it's and I mean, to be fair, again, having like Dread is a game that pretty much can only be played in person, at least right now. And even if there was some digital analog, does that work? That seems conflictory.
I don't know.
If there was any kind of like digital representation of it, I feel like it removes a lot of the fun of Dread, because it's a Jenga game in addition to like a horror TTRPG experience. So, there are stuff for that, but then, it's like we can't play Dread. App phone rolling is also nice for accessibility. I play with a guy who's blind with a phone roller. He can roll his own dice instead of having someone else roll for him. Yeah, that's a fair point. And
accessibility tools.
And that's another thing as well, is creating games with like accessibility in mind for what can be done, Because in all honesty, like, it's something where even people are like, there's just people who just don't process math the same way.
Oh, not me. That is me.
having a thing, like, imagine you're playing your game and you can just, instead of rolling the dice yourself, hit your thing like D&D Beyond and roll it on here. And it does the math for you and instantly calculates it out. That can improve like speed of play too.
Also, I'm gonna be completely honest. The only part of person-to-person tabletop that I will say hits different is just being at the same table with other human beings. The part that doesn't is like physical paper in front of me and dice and all that. I am digital dice pilled. I'm also just like physical die. I don't care anymore. I don't think I'll ever buy a dice set again, because like I don't know. I've long since like kind of realized you kind of just need the one, or like the two or the three just to make rolling convenient. I don't know. I'm digital dice pilled. I don't feel the difference. It doesn't feel like the tactile feel of rolling dice. It like I also just like the numbers being added for me, because like I numbers being added together doesn't work very well in my brain. Just numbers. I've always had a massive issue with it. Because like I think especially my adult life, I've figured out that my issue my entire life is that I'm number dyslexic. So like I just read shit wrong, and I just am like, oh, that's why this never processed very well.
Yeah, and and that's a person to person thing. I like having dice. I think I'm not a big paper character sheet fan myself, honestly, nowadays. Just because like in order to use it, you have to like erase a bunch, and it just is not good. I mean, there's some times where like it's okay, but I like dice. I like having different dice for a lot of different things. But honestly, it doesn't even matter. If you gave me an app that just let me have more fun playing tabletop, I don't care if it's physical or not. I don't care if we're all in the same room and we have to use our phones to play the game. If it works better, it works better. Plain and simple.
Yeah, like I don't know. It is a person-to-person like function thing, and just what your base opinion is. Because I've long since been just like, yeah, I don't feel majorly the difference, but just role playing to a table of people that like are reacting and able to use like body language and stuff does feel that.
Yeah,
part.
For sure.
Anything else like a sheet or like, because yeah, the erasing of a physical racing your health bar, that is annoying.
You know, and another thing as well, mics.
Oh,
Like,
too.
well, everyone has a nice phone, not everyone has a nice mic or a good computer nowadays.
True.
So, you know, that's why I always advocate for, you know, things you can do on the phone, because everyone typically has a good phone. Because like that's one of the things that gets in the way sometimes, or like mic etiquette can be a problem. People just hating to use push to talk because it's just more work. There's all kinds of stuff that like in-person stuff solves, but in reality, nowadays, I can't remember where I saw it, but I believe there was a study that says like nowadays most people, like 80% of people, have friends that do not live in the same town as them that they associate with on a weekly basis.
Yeah. I have a nice healthy mix of friends that like I have friends that I am friends with in my area, and I'm friends that I am friends with very far outside my area. Friends that a good chunk of them I've never seen in person. I don't have an issue with that because like, whatever. I don't really functionally see the difference between like hanging out with someone in person and over Discord. I don't really care much, but like, yeah, it is. It's the new age. Playing tabletop over Discord is just like it's the method we got because otherwise I wouldn't be able to play these games, and I'd rather play them in the first place.
Yeah, so right now it's about 68%, 60 to 68% of people have friends just online that they associate with on a regular basis. And when you consider that that 60% also includes people like in their 80s or 70s or even 60s, you know, like who didn't grow up in the internet age, like it's just going to be a thing that more and more is going to be a common thing because in person requires social skills. No, talking to people in any situation requires social skills. That's a
Yeah, I
weird
mean,
comment to make.
online still requires social skills. Like
Yeah.
it. If I was if I was like meeting a new person and then they had like, they're just being a dickhead because they had no like good social skills. They're just being an asshole online. I wouldn't be their friend. It would be like, it's just they're not in person, whatever. No, no transfers. It's just the difference is that I'm not tactically in front of them.
Yeah. Uh, and I guess on the subject of innovation, are there any games, old or new, that are notably innovative? Yeah, actually, Pathfinder is very innovative in a lot of ways. Like the 3 action system was particularly innovative because D&D already had a 3 action system, but Pathfinder just kind of opened it up and let it fit in it made an action system that worked very, very well. That you just don't see in a lot of other games. Also in Pathfinder, it's levels of success. Well, not technically innovative, was innovative for the D20 system. Because like there's a lot of other games that had levels of success based on like how high you got a roll over the thing. But Pathfinder made it like the straight 10 over, 10 under, which worked really, really well because it was no longer vague. It was you got 10 over or crit, you got stuff. It wasn't, oh, if you rolled the die and you got a success and it's actually an over success, the GM gives you something else based on how high you got over, because it was incredibly vague. Other innovative systems, I love Fabula Ultima's character creation system
It is a
because
very good one.
because not only is it a multi-class system, but the inherent thing is you must multi-class to make your characters. So, that being the case, it forces you to make a lot of very interesting choices that multi-classing in a lot of games doesn't do, and games that let you hyper-specialize doesn't allow you to do. No need for social skills online. Vapes directly into microphone.
Another system I'll say that I genuinely do think is pretty innovative, and I want to try out at some point, is I think the Age of Sigmar Soulbound is kind of pop the fuck off, and I don't see enough people talking about it for as interesting of mechanics I see, because it does a lot of really cool things character creation wise. I think it's really cool to see a, you know what, for all of the systems that we've encountered that are really rules light 2d6 systems, Soulbound is a crunchy system that uses 2d6s. It's got a really in-depth character creator. It has a direct mechanical system tied to XP, plot development, and like an outwardly buff debuff mechanic to promote like plot development, and so your players have a vested interest in, you know, actually like playing the game and advancing their own personal and grander campaign goals. Like there's a lot of things that the game does really, really well. Like making the setting really tied in with the game and having like every single element of like the setting playable in some way. Because there's just a simple thing that they created, the concept of a soulbound that is everybody of the Order faction is. There is the key tag of soulbound that makes you able to be part of this D&D party, which means that lore-wise it can be slotted in, and they give lots of details of exactly how this interacts with the world. So it's like, it's just, there's a lot of genuinely cool things this game does, and then it's still being supported really well. Like supplement stuff comes out that what I hear is actually really good supplements, and they're adding like a lot of shit. So that's one that I would recommend putting on your radar if you're in any way interested in Age of Sigmar. It's a dope game, and reading through the core book is fantastic.
Yeah, there's genuinely a lot of games I want to play so bad. If tabletop wasn't a investment of like a minimum 40 hours,
Yeah,
of not only my time but a minimum of like 3 other people, often 5 other people, I would definitely say I would like it'd be a lot easier. But it's such a massive time sink, and not that that's a bad thing. It's just hard to do in any quick fashion. The only thing you can do is just, be well known. Latest edition of Unknown Armies has some really neat mechanics built around trauma. As you become more hardened to violence, you can become better at inflicting it, but worse at emotional connections. Yeah, there's a lot of games that have very specific things. I think innovations can be very specific in that way, but the kind of innovations I'm interested in are stuff that's very more open, like can be used in a lot of different ways. I don't know what game started it, but an innovative thing back in the day was the advantage disadvantage system, where you chose perks for your character and disadvantages and how they affect your character, because I think that stuff kind of brings so much characterization, and it's so tragic that we don't see it in a lot of games nowadays.
it's something I saw getting discussed yet again by my favorite game director, Joshua Sawyer, the director behind like Icewind Dale, Fallout New Vegas, that stuff, of talking about reusing, just straight up reusing shit from other games and like spinning them in an interesting way. Because fun fact, if you've been enjoying Helldivers 2, it's straight up just using the movement mechanics from Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which I love the movement of Metal Gear Solid 5. Like I think the Metal Gear Solid 5 is like is a pretty decent game. The movement is probably the best part of it. And so that's there's been a part of me that like is literally following that same thought process that other people have been having of like something about running around in this game is so satisfying. It's like that's what it is. That's what it is. God, it's the fact that I'm not sneaking around that's making it hit harder. Because the most fun parts of that Phantom Pain is when I'm running around just guns blazing and not playing it like a stealth game. Um, and then talking about like how sometimes a really cool thing as a game designer is just finding a thing like that and then just taking it and riffing on it and trying to find something really interesting out of it. So when you have those kind of design concepts in a tabletop game, you take a concept and then you absolutely riff on it and like spin it. Like the advantage disadvantage system when you're coming up with character creation, I think is a really fun one that I enjoy because I like giving my character vulnerability. I really like that idea because I want my character to be fucked up in some way. Because I want my character to be weak. Because I think it forces some certain elements. And like there's other elements too, like I think innovatively. I'd have to look deeper, but like I do think the one innovative thing that I feel like people can pull from, specifically my example of Age of Sigmar Soulbound, is is probably other systems done it first. I think having the idea of tying XP and how it gamifies character growth and campaign growth and like progressing in that element is really good because it has the Doom Clock and it has like the Doom Clock specifically and the Flame Clock. Both of those are very integral to how the game progresses, and I really like how it's done. It's really cool, and I think other games doing it is such a smart way of just naturally kind of promoting players into making decisions they might not normally in a game where maybe they might fuck around and like not do the objectives or might not like think about what their character actually wants to achieve in campaign.
Yeah. It's in like speaking on a similar idea, man, do I want to I said this like a week or two ago. Do I just want to see someone take the Pathfinder like core system or algorithm and just use it in other systems, other settings, other kind of ideas? Because my god,
it's the orc, right?
Yes, the orc license.
Yeah, use the orc license.
Yeah. I think we will start seeing more games in the same line. You know what's funny? We started seeing more Lancer kind of ripoffs with like Goomba Banwa before we started seeing Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
I mean, inherently, I think it's a simpler system. And also,
I
it
agree.
makes sense because there's the current culture thing of surpassing Lancer on Itch.io. If you see that at all,
I haven't seen that at all. No.
Yeah, it's like it's not a like antagonistic thing, but it's on Itch.io when you release your core book. It's a sign of massive achievement if you can overtake the highest download list, because Lancer is always top dog on Itch.io. And so like if like highest downloaded core book of the week, if you can overtake Lancer for the week, that's like a major sign of like achievement. And there's a couple games that have done it, and I think Gumbat did that. And there's another game that did it really recently, and then everyone was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, deserved! Well, like we did it, we beat Lancer!" But then they're all like Lancer fans yelling about it, because it's just like I think Lancer right now is just in the state of like being the top dog in the indie scene. So like some indie devs are being really inspired by like specifically Lancer. So it makes sense. I do want to see people inspired by Pathfinder, because it's a good game and they deserve it. And I want to see people like take Pathfinder, keep the crunch, and like build some of their own systems on top. Like I would love to see Pathfinder's rule set take place in like other settings, other ideas, just other things. I really want to see that. Not just like Starfinder, but like just other things.
Yeah. And I can't wait for Starfinder. I think it's gonna be really fun. I want a less busy setting, I think, in general, than Galarian or Starfinder, because I want something fresh,
Mm.
I want something that's very easy to kind of jump in on the ground floor on, because it, like, not that there's anything wrong with the settings inherently. I think it's just I came in so late. It's a little overwhelming to kind of get like super into it. But maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe the setting's just not interesting enough to make me want to make that jump. Like Warhammer, I've
It
been
must
able
be.
to get into, and it's been going on for like what, 50 years?
Basically, it's been around since I want to say it's Rogue Trader and like original Warhammer Fantasy was like late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, 40, 50
Um,
years, somewhere in that range.
it's been a while. Yeah, because like I can jump into Warhammer and like delve into like the deep forbidden lore as in first edition.
Yeah.
Uh, the deep lore that isn't canon anymore. But like it just depends on like how invested you are. Same with like I'd say like World of Darkness, where
Hmm.
it's just the thing of if you're dedicated, you like and you're really hooked into something immensely. It doesn't matter how dumb and like how invested and how much work it takes, you'll go into it. But I also agree. I'm not super hooked in the Galarian lore because like I think Galarian objectively is kind of cool, but I also don't think Galarian has enough there where I'm like gonna become like a Pathfinder lore channel.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Honestly, I've been doing Pathfinder for a while now, and I still haven't. Uh, yes, this is one I want to talk about. So, as a mechanic, little clocks that fill in up so Blades in the Dark's clock mechanics are really, I think, a good innovation as well. I think they're a
Mhm.
very good way to represent to the players in a very visual fashion the progression of like an event of some kind.
Makes sense that a lot of games have taken that much inspiration specifically from Blades in the Dark. Like it seems pretty like understandable because like how many games have come out that have specifically cited like Blades in the Dark like as an
Yeah.
inspiration.
And in like there's definitely a lot of very interesting ways that games have done it. I want to see more. I want to see innovation. I want to see new games with interesting settings. I feel like a lot of the times as well, a lot of game designers get very complacent when it comes to designing a new game, making it more about like, oh, I want to make a TTRPG about, you know, uh Dark Souls. Here's a good example. It's like I want to make a Dark Souls TTRPG. Let's put it in a D&D 3.5 like system. As it's like, no, make a whole game for it. Do try to make it from the ground up. Like, not every game has to be from the ground up. Like I said, I want someone to make a Pathfinder system and and do something else with it. But like Dark Souls especially has so many very unique mechanics that I think you could do some interesting like game specific mechanics that are very Dark Soulsy. I mean,
Yeah, I
heck,
think the other bit that that hits is like when there are two like conversely when there are designers and like game designers that are genuinely doing innovative ideas, then there should be the people behind it that are actually rewarding that because like
hmm,
we're saying this and imagine how many genuinely innovative designers and like games are currently sitting in like RPG drive through in HEO that just like no one has paid attention to because there's just not enough weight behind it for anyone to have noticed.
yeah,
And just like they just haven't gotten it because there's just like something we've talked about so many times. It's just there's just not enough like weight swinging behind just like mildly browsing table games like you would like Steam. Just like it's not a thing people do like most people do in the TTRPG space. Just kind of like, I wonder what released today on Drive Through RPG. Let's just take a nice little browse. Um, Because, like, there could just be absolute gold sitting in there. But, like, might not know.
Yeah. Well, and one day I want to grow the channel to be at the point where not only can I just like chuck money at games and be like, I like your game, bam, $100, bam, $1,000, uh, but also be able to like blast games to more people.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to be able to do that too. Because, like, I would love to just be able to have, like, I like it's the kind of thing like the videos I've made about like anima, like Lancer, is like I would love to be able to make that style of video just like for random little like worlds I discover of like I find a core book or like some weird little project and I'm like, oh, this is a genuinely cool thing. Let me gush about it for like 20 minutes, just the vibes of it. Because there are some amazing projects that just need people to talk about it.
Yeah, I agree, and that's like something I really want to do on the channel. Like, we're getting there slowly but surely. I think we're sitting at 4.68 right now, and I'm trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. While that's not substantial, it'll be more, and that'll give me like I've been thinking recently of I want to do a video or videos of like the let's go to the game store and see what they got and like film going to a game store and like looking and getting a game. Because one of the things that I've been finding is with the amount of money I make on YouTube, it's not a ton. And so I've been thinking like what can I do to like make the channel better? Like what can I buy that I can reinvest into the channel? And it dawned on me very recently, I can go out and like every month buy 1 to 2 tabletop books or like a board game every month if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And the problem is I don't really have a video idea yet to like really make use of that, but that is something that like is available to me. And it really comes down to like how can I convey how interesting or awesome tabletop is to like other people with whatever information I get from that, because one of the problems is the only way to really show people nowadays is to talk about it. And while that is useful and people obviously do watch that kind of content, hey, thanks, Will and Essen, for the sub on YouTube. I appreciate you. I want to make a better, more digestible kind of content, something that people can look at and get like actually hyped about.
Yeah. It's that, and I also feel like you're suited to do some board game reviews too, because like you certainly got the collection for it.
I have a
You got, like,
collection.
interesting board games.
Well, and again, like I was talking before stream, I've been doing some research on like Mr. Beast and Matt Pat and kind of like the art of YouTube and kind of like making hype. And I think one of the few ways that I want to make tabletop more interesting is to make the act of tabletop a much more like visual thing. And the act of going out and buying board games or tabletop games, I think is a way you can do that. Like, if I had more money, I could even see myself doing like a Mr. Beast video style of buying a $5 tabletop game versus a $60 tabletop game and like reviewing it and doing that kind of style video, not as like a constant thing or the style of the channel, but just like as a different way of presenting tabletop, because going out and buying games at stores is genuinely fun. And that's the kind of content I want to do, is just more stuff that is better visualizing what makes tabletop fun, which is like procuring tabletop, the interesting things in tabletop. One of the reasons why I think animation does so well in tabletop, or D&D horror stories is so interesting in tabletop, is they're very synthesized versions of tabletop. Like with animation, you have visual representations of it, and with like D&D horror stories, which is another pretty big area of the TTRPG market, it is like the worst. It's the boiled down worst experience of tabletop that people can be like, oh my god, that sounds horrible, but it's interesting, like a train wreck, you know?
Yeah.
I watched half your videos and realized you talked about subs that I didn't actually press the dang button. Thank you. I appreciate ya. I try to say it in every video, but maybe it's just I always forget to do it until like the very end. So I need to get it better in like the first like 8 minutes, because that's when most people watch. But yeah, so you know, in the future, I definitely want to do more. I definitely want to show more, and we actually are getting to the end of stream here. So I do have some announcements for everyone who's been sticking here, about some things to come. First of all, very recently, Critical Role has just announced that they're doing a open playtest of Daggerheart in like March 13th. So I will be looking it over and I'll be reviewing it. So I'll be doing a review of the open playtest for Daggerheart. Maybe we'll do a one-shot on it. Who knows? I know that would be something that I think people are interested in. But that's something we're going to be checking out. In addition, we possibly... It's in the works, but, you know, things can always happen. We might be having a guest from Paizo's staff next TableTalk next week. So, if you want to see that, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitch, join our Discord linked down in the description or below on Twitch, and you'll get notified whenever we go live. But we'll probably be talking to one of the creative creators, the one of the upper level echelon. Like, again, I don't want to like specify who, but one of the upper members of the creative staff, about Pathfinder and about game design theory in general. So, anything you want to leave us off with, sir, before we head out?
Yeah. If you're interested at all in tabletop lore specifically, that is more my wheelhouse. Specifically, I cover Warhammer 40k and Vampire the Masquerade, like World of Darkness, but also lately I've been doing Lancer stuff. So I've been doing lately my Lancer fun facts for every mech, which I put out today. So you can go to my channel. It's linked in Cam's YouTube, or just look up Glue Boy. That's me. Big fan of today's video. So if you want to go watch that, go watch, go give a like and all the normal YouTube stuff. And yeah, just I'm chugging along on my own channel.
All right. Yeah, and go check out the most recent Lancer video. I listened to it. It's very entertaining. I think it's really fun. I really like your brand of, hey guys, let's talk about all the neat things in each of these settings. Like, nothing serious, nothing meta. Just like, hey, do you know that like this guy is just an actual living goblin in the Warhammer 40k universe?
That is
AKA,
Lucas. Lucas is just a
yeah,
living little. He's just a little goblin. He's
a little
just
gremlin,
a little
man. People fight to not have him in their core.
I picked up the Lucas book. I'm like, I usually, when a character comes out, or I start covering a character, I read their book, The literal first chapter is him watching a fist fight between two very important characters in the Spaceballs fight to not have to deal with him for a season, and I'm like, I love this man. I think I'm
Yeah.
falling in love. And then it was like, he is great. So yeah, go check it out. That is the vibe of my videos. It's the things I enjoy of each of those settings. So
Yeah. It's really, really good. And like I said, I've been doing a lot of research. I'll try to bring some more interesting tabletop content to y'all. Also, I know I keep saying it, but tomorrow, cleric build, the unyielding crusader. I really like war priests, and war priest is big. You could make a very paladin-esque character with war priest now. I think it's
yeah,
really, really cool. So
I want to play one at some point.
it's check that video out tomorrow, but that's gonna be it for us. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.